It's June 8th, it's 2023. As you can see, look at how the light is playing inside of my area. Um, Outside, I'm going to make note of what's on the current events. I took photos yesterday, I took some video yesterday. There's these Canadian wildfires, or at least that's what the news is saying. Um, and um, it's filling up the air. They have a scale of 1 to 500. Yesterday, the mayor said it got up to 484. Really dangerous. Um, I'm trying to figure out again. There were some pieces of the movie that they brought out the day. I didn't realize that they actually had a movie the day the Earth stood still with Keanu Reeves in it. 2008. Um, I'm looking for pieces of they played something called an Iron Man that came out in 2013 yesterday. I was looking at pieces of that. I was looking at some of the current events um, of what like the See the BS is talking about. I mean, humans are full of BS, but whatever. Um, and so I'm just trying to sort through what's already happened and was real and what, as far as clocks go, biological clocks. So I'm watching this most important piece, which is the day the earth stood still, um, and how they misused my clock and my clock system. Um, how they forced some hybrid situation. And I don't know if that was a think tank, according to like an Iron Man type movie set. Um, I don't know who that, I mean, like at the end of Iron Man 3, they had something about the potato gun. I see Mike Pence just announced he's running for president and he's at the podium in Iowa. Potato gun, just, it's a Mark II. Um, Made sense at Special Task Force Mark. For me, anyhow, knowing that the day the Earth stood still actually happened. They said, again, I'm watching the movie through two lenses. One, knowing as an experiencer that I was pulled into one of these spheres um, in no uncertain terms. It's just that light that looks like this, and then you're brought into that centrifuge, and then whatever goes on and then they send you back. And then there's the um, and I heard also in this movie, let's stick at that for a minute, at like the really unusual and strange, um, because I read in this crazy Asian novel by Kevin, who happens to be a minion, according to the Disney whatevers, even though his last name is Kwan. I also saw a piece on Yo-Yo Mom this morning, a cellist, but they call it cellist here in North America. Um, and then knowing I met a real authentic, um, something else that told me firsthand, that there were there's the people in China that speak Mandarin, and there's the people in China that speak Cantonese. I don't know anything more than that. She just confirmed that those two sections of humans exist, or the two sections of humanity exist. One going by Mandarin, one going by Cantonese. I don't know what their qualms are. I'm in North America and I have a different monetary system, so I have my own whatever in this section of theater. Um, So there's that. So they said multiple spheres opened up at once, and then whatever happens when multiple spheres open and are brought into the same whatever that already happened. Um, then there's this idealistic sphere, like if I was in a peer group. At this point, I think I don't have a choice but to choose the WASP one that was at 88, since their numbers align with my hometown heroes. Um, for the moment, even though my hometown team has let me down throughout multiple decades. But I guess that's what Special Task Force Mark does for the children that actually know and can cipher what the day the world stood still means. Um, so there's that. Then there's this sphere sub story, um, which I've seen over Captain America, where they have this world, um, like in Flushing, they have this world globe thing, or this world sphere, and I'm like, I mean, I know that we're one of those locations at, and I don't know if you call it alien equipment. I don't know how that is with foreign whatever, um, but New York's one of those designated locations according to the media. I mean, it's all over the media with all different. It's an engine all of its own, um, and so I didn't choose Jason 1976 at all. I was sent here in 1978, born of a whatever mother and father, but I just had a different position in the architecture that now feels like it's been bastardized, um, by them withholding the RH that I needed in RH negative territory with the us because of some other, I don't know. In Iron Man, they were talking about, and like for Iron Man, like I can only think like you put somebody in irons, those are the rebels, the revolutionists, those are the problem people, but then they have their own reality that they're living in. They always think that they're protecting something, but they don't always know the barracuda or the shark or the seal that exists elsewhere. So um, I get that as I watch this. So I'm watching it through two different lenses. The one where there's actually like that glowing orb, and in this particular instance, they put in Helen and they gave her Benson as the name, just so clocks lines up with the 107, um, for across the pond that has some whatever with New York itself, just so I stay in alignment of, I'm just going off of what the text was written on the postage stamp that I arrived to. I don't know if we're in some other engine oil argument. I thought that there was whatever. Um, so I'm watching how they have this conversation about like this theoretical news outlet, how they were portraying the arrival of this whatever. And then I'm thinking of the first child, um, which lines up with that Christmas date at conception, but they provided RH positive problem, um, at ABO, and anything working New York engine knows that I had a very real serious marital issue that needed to be handled properly. I'm pretty sure that when I met with my college advisor, that was some kind of an intercept. Um, to speak with whatever was the controlling whatever in this area to make sure that we didn't have a problem. But that's exactly what was had, and I don't know why, but it seems to be costing humanity a whole lot, and I don't know how to rectify this situation. I mean, the last meeting was right before Trump got elected, where the day the earth stood still and then got pulled through that whatever system back to origin to have a familial conversation with origin committed for where I found my person or he found me, however that works. We were finally brought together, and whatever happened there to update each one of our files wherever he might be. And so this way it was documented correctly for once, not having to rely on engine workers and mechanics that sometimes get the details right.
Criticize the U.S. response to the Iraq.
Now, it says here, it says alien landing sparks global panic.
The arrival of the spheres.
Reactions from both national and international religious communities have been varied.
Now, this is like a spoof, like almost like this is a movie. This is one of their think tank engines, according to Iron Man 3 in 2000 and whatever, where I guess it's like nobody really has to take responsibility because there's a lot of different world leaders and they're pulling in different directions. There's this global economy now. Nobody wants a global war. Nobody wants famine. Nobody wants their hometown or their people to get hurt. And then there's some other underlying issues going on with the future and like the children of the future. And are like, with my concern is I don't really like, I see what my last son is surrounded by, but I don't see a lot of my son in the New York area. And I don't know if that has to do with prior fights with continuing this gasoline crisis by changing the venue of going from American cars to these foreign cars and then pushing foreign agendas. Like there's like a whole lot of, I don't know what that's called. It sounds like the business office to me, but I came here to be with one special person and have children, and just to have to not take part in anything like this or even call out the engine. But there's some real serious things going on, and alignment is also off, which I see them also talking about in several different pieces of conjecture brought through the North American like media companies. I don't know if they have global ties to elsewhere. Again, I don't know how to follow the corporate structure of it.
While some have responded with hope and measured optimism.
So there's this part.
Most religious communities have considered recent events to be apocalyptic. At gatherings and prayer vigils in virtually every major city, many see the arrival of the Central Park sphere as a sign of a new era or perhaps even the end of the world.
They're calling it the Central Park sphere, which is interesting. I'm going to go back to what they're calling that for a moment, because that has a very different than the Flushing sphere. Just so this is kept, because it looks like in this Iron Man 3 movie, like I didn't like the first Iron Man at all. Hard to follow. I don't like the lead actor that they chose. I didn't like Frank when he was in New York as a leading man in my life. I was not happy with that couple relationship. He was only 5'5", for anybody who follows height requirements on dating me. It's over 6 foot. Just it's a standard that I'm not willing to, like, whatever, but here we are at somebody's pushing these relationships into my very real situation. And I don't know what that engine driver really is at this point, but it seems to be tragic and really harmful. Now, in this part of the movie, they talk about almost like that this relationship that I never wanted with 1976, um, in the way of it's three different DNA codes, like almost hybriding into one. That's first clock. Then there were whatever. But this just gets messy, and I really shouldn't have to explain this to anybody, especially in this format.
To analyze the tissue samples we harvested from the being. This is our chief geneticist, Dr. Hideo Ikigawa. This is our chief astrobiologist, Dr. Helen Benson. Doctor.
The being is in a nascent state. The DNA samples we've taken seem to represent three distinct life forms.
3 different DNA types?
Yes, including the being's brain. The body tissue is human, as far as we can tell. The gray flesh encasing it is organic material, some kind of bioengineered spacesuit. What it resembles, oddly enough, is placental tissue.
Which makes sense given that placenta is a life support system, and that basically, in order to survive in our environment, the being had to be born here, in its human form. They must have come here in the past and obtained a DNA sample from a human subject.
Now, I'm going to go back to what her education level was. That's what I had. Interestingly enough, the movie that came out in 2008, I had the Princeton was the publisher on the textbook of the second medical microbiology. Here they're calling it astrobiology. But when I took it, I took regular biology. I took AP biology in high school. But then I took a college set to kind of offset what was AP in high school. Again, I have a lot of analysis I do, and then there was the medical microbiology is what they refer to as astrobiology in this particular movie, which again is a verbal construct that depending on what engine you're at and who, if they looked at my matriculated, but they weren't in my classroom, it really would get like messy on one conversation. So now then there's the two-sphere level conversation. There's these multiple spheres in order to fix the astral projection and the alignment of, like, say, planetary within solar system and equipment. And then there's this, like, spheres of influence conversation that the business office uses with those big hypothetical think tanks, which then drive all sorts of other markets. But here it says financial markets react to alien invasion, but this is a different kind of alien invasion. It's not the kind of where it's like one brother from another mother, like in nation. I mean, now it's like cross pollination in a totally different engine driver. It's like no longer a potato farmer at Sunday worship under the same house that look like, if we go back 3 generations, we could all have the same grandfather. We're not looking at like that level of conversation any longer. Now this is getting really, really messy.
In early trading this morning in response to the crisis in Central Park. Trading has been halted on the New York Stock Exchange, the Nikkei, and the Hang Seng as Manhattan prepares for a massive evacuation. In other cities around the world, people are voluntarily evacuating population centers, fearing that the sphere in Central Park may be the vanguard of an impending alien.
The president and the vice president have been taken to separate.
Now, is this something that happened before I even arrived in 1978 when a different engine and driver was taking place? I I mean, like, again, I don't know world situation because the communication here has been so poor. Right now, we're going through a smoke thing outside, just basic human stuff. And like, the air's no longer breathable because Canada's having some fires and some smoke blew down from the north. And I only have one channel. And then there's the talks of there is responsibility when you have like a subset population, like at the MIC level. And then we talk, the Crazy Asian book talks about HNWI. And now, are those the mix that, like, are those the good mix or are those the evil mix? It gets confusing at, like, how do I respond? Because I'm so, and then this morning Arnold Schwarzenegger put out something called a FUBAR, which is some word I'm not supposed to say, but here it is, fucked up beyond something recognition, all recognition. And I'm like, again, that sounds like Jarhead, but I don't want to upset whatever and whatever. I think in Iron Man, they call it their suit Jarvis. And I'm like, right, yeah. But Happy in that third movie is intubated and looks like he's on life support and barely breathing. Like, he can't breathe on his own. That's a problem. So now I'm watching this movie as to, is this how the military is told to react to this? In, like, because now would that place me at civilian level? Because, like, this gets confusing between FEC and SEC. And again, I don't know if that's the human experience of what they expect, but with actions like that, that's what pulls the world out of, like, solar alignment. I mean, that's the multiple spheres, or whoever's able to walk through that, whatever, and then converge because they have special clocks. I mean, that is just an unreal expectation because you'll never get anything back in order, ever. You won't have harmony with the earth. You won't have harmony with humanity. There won't, I mean, it's hard to evolve when you're headed down the wrong path. You've already interrupted the cycle of clocks. You've forced clocks to come genetically altered. And now there's some rival whatever going on. And now you've even spread that rivalry into a whole nother set of conversations because you added genetics that should have never been even introduced. Which is why when I was there, I mean, there's things, I'm just keeping my conversation between RH negative to RH negative at this point, and the whatevers, the clocks that are here. I mean, again, there's special alignment between positioning of arrivals at like the level of CERN in astrology that now has to be brought back um, into whatever. But by withholding an RH negative compatible person, knowing that I was going to have one of these anchor points in really hard to explain phenomenon. I don't know why they would have altered that course. I don't know why they would have introduced alternate genetics that may cause rivalry to occur and may cause engines to be like to misfire or try to overthrow or misprogram and then start some other alternative situation. Like, again, it makes no sense to me whatsoever. Like, I've just logically, there's just too much alternate going on for what? A couple of movies to keep your head straight? I mean, it just, but yet keeping me in some situation where I'm being poisoned by the air, the food, and there's there's not even humans like worth being around for day to day. I mean, like, I make do with whatever's around. I try to stay nice, cordial, whatever. But am I having like the time of my life or what? No, I'm not. I see nothing being accomplished that needs to be done, like daily. And then I see a whole lot of punishment going on in my area, visually, biologically, for which I'm in the situation where I can't get to the solutions that I need. Now, this is one set of spheres that takes place in New York. They call it Central Park. That's one set of astrologic things that are going on in certain spheres of HNWIs. And then now this movie was the day this Earth stood still. That's one super serious level of conversations. Then I'm going to move over to this World's Fair that happened before I arrived in Flushing, that I don't even think my parents were getting the correct information when they were dating and introduced to Flushing Meadow Park, where this actual sphere exists inside New York. So I'm going to pause this for a minute and I'm going to go over to that movie as a different reference, because that's a completely different set of movie engines. And again, like, that has relevance with Captain America and keeping congruent with the federal family that's on the green linen that's had history here and still has history here. So I'm going to pause this for 1 second. So here's this other conversation about a different sphere. This one is in Flushing Meadow Park, not Central Park. To an astrobiologist or a medical microbiologist, or took the class good enough. Like, I passed the class with A, had laboratory time, and it had classroom time. So that's my degree of certainty. I got the end mark, whatever. But this sphere exists. I also saw this looking sphere in a development on the Northeast coast that I was invited to. It's just outside of there, whatever.
I don't see what the problem.
But this is what the piece actually looks like in New York. Then it has like 3 high towers. It was called Windows on the World. It's still there. But that's a different sphere. And then there's these large studios making movies and keeping, I guess, whatever Iron Man does with marksmen and whatever they're able to put together, and then they put together some kind of superhero. But there is a difference I've noticed between Marvel and then Marvel Studios. And I don't know if there's like an inner struggle within even that subset, because again, I don't have access to these humans. I see them making a lot of conjecture. What it's used for, I have no idea. But it's not really necessarily helping, that I can tell, by keeping me so far out of the loop that the world actually had to stand still for a different set of spheres to activate, to then have like a real conversation. But then I got sent back, and it was back to Tia Frio and some weirdness between Romer and Tia Frio and my parents, and then my children being taken away, and then me getting thrown into some kind of like biological effect where they're sending me into hospitals trying to like commit me like to some mental institution. I'm like, really? This is what Americans do to American citizens? I thought this only happened in like the horror shows in foreign nations. I didn't realize that this is what Americans actually do to like civilian women that tried to do her everything to get to like the right whatever, just and needed to rely on the adults on the field that failed her. Now, I don't know if there's somebody walking around saying that they need an astrobiologist. For me, this is called medical microbiology. Again, I had laboratory time and class time, and it was a Princeton ISBN like registered textbook for constructs that align. This happens to say Princeton University, present day. So again, I had the textbook. It should be the same language, but they're saying that here, this is astrobiology. I went to NCC. My son was on campus when I was going the second time. First time I took it, he was in kindergarten. Second time, or pre-kindergarten. Second time that I took it, which was right before I went to Virginia and met with whoever I met with in Virginia. Second time I took it was when Ben was actually doing criminal justice on the NCC campus.
Thiobacillus, which, William, is a remarkable bacterium to be colonist?
It's the only known organism that lives in sulfuric acid.
That's right. And yes, Miss Ronnie?
Staphylococcus radiodurans, first discovered in 1956, breeding inside drums of radioactive waste.
That's correct. So, Papa John, Thiobacillus, Staphylococcus, which of these three would most likely survive in the extreme environment of the Jupiter moon Callisto, and why? Tom, can you get the lights, please? That's your loud report question for this week.
She says that she's astrobiology. I'm more medical field with just human physiology and anatomy. In the learning facility that I was, the college that I was at, local college, they, not to be confused with my college advisor that I met when I was 16 that disappeared. I think that was a completely different system. That's like talking about the day the earth stood still college advisor, and then me having to do some kind of like Flushing Meadow Park, Leisure World college with like the regular kids. It's two totally different, like it's like living a double life I mean, for lack of a better term, that's like really what it means. So the 16-year-old college advisor at like the day the earth stood still importance is one set of circumstances. And then I have to try to traverse a conversation of like, no, the NCC type, where I didn't even have a college advisor there. Their guidance office was not helpful at all. In fact, it was multiple obstacles between application dates and then class filling up. And even though they said they had a nursing shortage, they really weren't like willing to work with the population. And then then it became political because they started taking human trafficking in from outside of the US, foreign aliens into the New York area. Some of them I find out later on the US was investigating them. They didn't even have medical, like they didn't even have the class. They paid for a certificate. They paid for the paperwork. They didn't even complete the whatever, but they're working inside of the North American medical system, treating patients without having done and I was here. I was willing to do the work and to go through the process the correct way, but that was taken from me and given that opportunity to some foreign alien invasion that they just human trafficked into this area. Through what channel? I don't know. But it's part of the problem in New York, and it's been an ongoing problem, only getting worse from what I can see. I mean, it looks like the model agency broke completely. They don't even look FEC children anymore, and the ratios are completely off. I mean, my son is like, I think there's, and like, again, it's hard to tell who's Rh positive and who's Rh negative. 3 maybes. And then there's the rest that I can tell are Rh positives for this particular genetic database. And then, like, that's something I was able to obtain in the local area for higher education, trying to get myself into something where I can survive on my own, since my HNWI is off doing whatever HNWIs do. And then there's engines being driven in the wrong direction, and I'm not even like part of the HNWI engine that I need to be part of based on being an Rh negative under these circumstances, in this petri dish, if you will, for this one conversation to keep it pretty sterile. And then I see that there's this piece where there's like astrology. Like, again, I don't even know the word constructs in even at an NCC college, like how to even get that degree of what I need to know, because my HNWI is gone. Like, where did he go? Who am I supposed to look up to? And who am I supposed to rely on? I'm one of the clocks. That it means something in when the world stands still. And the FEC, they sure know what clocks mean. I'm pretty sure SEC knows too. They just, I don't think at this point they know the severity of it in their totality. They're relying on somebody else to let them know.
Time for crash briefing in the conference room. Object 07/493 was first spotted just beyond Jupiter's orbit by the Space Guard program. It was notable for the fact that it was not moving in an asteroidal ellipse, but rather it had a hyperbolic orbit and was shooting through our solar system.
Now, they don't even tell me where this is, what they call this, like as far as an advisor of like what kind of information would I have needed to know. And these movies were not available to me in a digital library or in any kind of library. Like, I was hand-holding. Like, I arrived to a couple of VHS tapes, like Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. Whatever the hell that meant, I had no idea. Cinderella and some of the Disney princesses. That was the extent of my ability to gain information. They did not have Thunderbirds airing. They did not have Dragnet airing on the television. I didn't know there was none of this being spoken of at the Americans' household. And then I had my Italians, which spoke a different language that I couldn't follow along, but they at least had class. They played like they liked classical music. They liked opera. They liked the fine arts. They spoke differently. They just, oh, they were like a dream. They were like everything I wanted to be. Especially when I went over to the Americans, I did not like anything. I just didn't. I didn't like the beer. I didn't like the car fumes. I hated everything about it. And it was just not what I was built for. I just knew it when I was a kid. I used to tell Judy, I'm like, I love you, Judy. I love you. I love my uncles. I love grandma. I just don't want to be stuck at this level for the rest of my life and the rest of my journey. I want to be more like my Italians. I want music without words and to know how to play musical notes. I want to live at their level of whatever. And for whatever reason, the New York area stuck me in some like muscle car, like Bobby and Ricky and the Talladega Night crap. And now I'm like relying on them in like the 11th hour to pull through for me when they like drag me into this. And some of them are living at HNWI standards, which is even more sick. How the previous HNWI even allowed these Bobby and Ricky Talladega Night whatevers to supersede the level of importance of a biological clock system.
The object is moving in.
It just speaks to their priorities in this area, which have been a consistent obstacle and hurdle that has kept me in some dead end facility. That's a real problem.
Speeds of up to 3 times 10 to the 7th meters per second. At first, it was projected to pass millions of miles outside of Earth's orbit. However, we soon discovered that the object was not following a gravitationally free fall trajectory. As such, its path was recalculated. It was at this time.
And then again, these are, and it goes to where it's in New
The
York.
crisis response team was activated and everything you see around you was set in motion.
Can we launch a missile to intercept it?
The military is attempting.
And again, when the story is wrong, and then you bring in whoever that's supposed to represent, which I have a pretty good idea because I've been watching to see the BS, and I've been watching the sports washing and all this other stuff going on. And then Iron Man is like all like mad at the Mandarin, and I'm like, oh my God, is that like the little guy standing up to the big guy in Mandarin and Cantonese? Like, is that gonna be like, why do I have unbreathable particulate in my, I'm an RH negative. Where is my HNWI? Like, that's like rescue for me. And I don't even know how to find them. I don't even know what face is like responsible or safe at this point. Really, I don't.
Tonight with David Muir.
Now, this was the world news from tonight, last night. So the other pieces were movie pieces let out in different years, but not really, I guess, confirmable for like the rest of the whatever. This is the news media, and this is something I can confirm. I've walked out, and there's actually smoke in the air. I can't even go out to exercise today.
Tonight, breaking news.
And this is the first, going back to like national security and going back to the responsibility of those that hold our national security. And what are they teaching the next generation, like the leaders before? How are they connecting, and how are they building the secure network of people that are first responders, emergency, and people who just live here? There's been no attempt whatsoever that I've had with, I mean, like, I don't know how to find them. They have not made themselves known. This is like the first conversation about air quality in any substance. First time I'm hearing about particulate. That's not even in a curriculum that I had access to. Like, there should, if you live in New York City, like, there should be access at my level of some sort of, especially as an RH negative. Like, I'm so few and far between in the city. Why is there not like a phone call and saying, hey, Nick, NYU is holding this. This is kind of important, this series of classes while you're here. You're one of the residents here. Or Queensboro is doing it. To my queen, like, president of Queens. Simple as anything. Why is there no connection? Why is the president of Queens not calling me? I'm RH negative. That's like really big deal in like the day the world stood still. And so, like, that, to get me into the classes of, to know what a nano like metric is on particulates and so on and so forth. I mean, like, there's been no effort whatsoever to bring me in at any level.
News, the new and urgent warnings across much of the U.S. tonight. The toxic air from Canada, the war.
So, like, my whole point is they've built nothing. They have nothing. They've built nothing because they haven't even brought me in to whatever they think they've built or whatever they think they're running. There's no communication between myself and them, and not for my lack of trying, but there's been no communication effort at all, or no even attempts to bring me into this conversation.
The warnings for 115 million Americans now. Here in New York City, the sky turning orange, the skyline blanketed in smoke. The city reporting the worst air quality now in the world. Smoke stretching from New York City to Philadelphia to Washington, D.C., as far south now as Georgia. Smoke from hundreds of Canadian wildfires blanketing the U.S. Pushed in like a conveyor belt tonight, the system driving all of this, with millions of Americans, including residents of New York City, now being told to stay indoors. Sporting events canceled tonight. Smoke delaying flights at major airports. The White House today pressed on the situation, calling it another alarming example of the climate crisis. Tonight, the very real health risks and how long this system is expected to stay in place. Trevor Alt reporting and Rob Marciano timing this out. Meantime, the race for the White House tonight, Mike Pence is officially running, and today, right out of the gate, taking aim at his former boss, arguing Donald Trump should never be president again. Rachel Scott in Iowa. Meantime, the special counsel investigation into former President Trump, news coming in tonight. One of Trump's closest confidants appearing before a grand jury, Pierre Thomas, with late reporting. The high school graduation ceremony erupted.
So here's this piece.
The U.S. like a conveyor belt. Tonight here in New York City, the mayor now urging everyone in the city to stay inside if you can. The images are just stunning, the before and after. This is the before, the EarthCam webcam at the top of the Empire State Building, looking toward Brooklyn just 3 days ago. And this is the view tonight. The city's air quality today, the index that measures this, the worst in the world now. Limited visibility affecting flights into New York. This plane landing at LaGuardia today. Ground stops for a time at all airports in the New York area, Philadelphia, Washington, D.C. too. New York's famous landmarks, nearly invisible through the haze. Look at this tonight. You can barely see the Statue of Liberty there. The Chrysler Building with the orange sky behind it. Outside Grand Central Station, a man wearing a mask to protect against the toxic air. In fact, so many now wearing masks again. Yankee Stadium is empty tonight. Major League Baseball has postponed games in New York and Philadelphia. And look at the map tonight. Over the next 24 hours, the smoke will continue to drift slowly down through the Northeast, the I-95 corridor, for days. The deepest reds there, the most concerning. The red areas considered unhealthy. The darkest purple and maroon there on the map labeled hazardous. That's of the highest concern tonight.
It's games in New York and Philadelphia. This time lapse from EarthCam showing conditions growing even worse through the day. Lower Manhattan blanketed in orange. New York City's now registering as the worst air quality of any major city in the world. The Air Quality Index, which is scaled from 1 to 500, with 150 deemed unhealthy, this afternoon NYC topped 400. By comparison, today Delhi, India was around 160, Shanghai, China was around 125. The hazardous air here extending upstate to cities like Syracuse. So many once again donning the same masks they've worn through the pandemic.
This could kill us. This could literally kill us. These are very, very fine bits of matter that can get inhaled very deep into your lung tissue.
New York's governor calling this an emergency crisis. New York City's mayor urging the entire city to stay indoors.
This is not the day to train for a marathon or to do an outside event with your children.
The effects of breathing in the smoke's toxic particulates continuously are comparable to smoking up to a half a pack of cigarettes or more. And emergency rooms worried about the cumulative impact from days of dangerous air are now preparing for potential patients.
The more exposure folks have, the more likely it is that they'll be sick.
The low visibility even delaying flight.
Now, this was the 6 o'clock news on Channel 7 last night. This is from the Nova Scotia government, and this is their smoke. And so I'm watching this, and for the first time, I went to Fort Totten last night. They did such a wonderful job. I have to say, the locals did pull together for the children, for my son included, with the whatever he's going to school with. The one that has, because I saw in the Crazy Rich Asian book, they have this TEO whatever, and of course now I'm up to my 2012, which I call my Mayan calendar baby, only because I have a Y2K baby, and then there's a Mayan calendar baby, which are both off from the actual, the day the world stood still clock baby that I also have. That's neither the first nor the last. He's right into the whatever. So there's the whatever coming through. There's this one of the moms, Vicky, yesterday pulled up some website I had never heard of, and it was a .gov website. And she said that if the particulates get to 200, that it's deemed hazardous. That was according to her, my only live interactive feature. First time I even knew, I'm like, where did you even find this? And she's like, I don't know, someone told me about the website. I'm like, oh, all right. So now at least I have a website that I can go to in order to, but again, without the locals passing along this information, there's no way for me to arm or protect myself and my son and even know how to follow along with this level of danger and hazard. So now tonight I see they're using the same model or the same scale as this one woman, Vicky, showed me yesterday in the field while we were at the Bayside the Fort Totten Officers Club in Bayside on the Fort Totten grounds. And it was out for the Bayside Historical Society, and it was outside the Army Corps Engineers, I believe. And again, like, I really don't know how the inside structure of the US is even behaving at this point. But it was like my Americans were already disadvantaged from my European side when I arrived. I did alert whatever but I again didn't know like what now my inside family is at war with between the Irish and the Italian. I mean, how as a kid are you, if you're Irish and you're Italians? I thought my Irish and Italians were getting along. I preferred the more gentle and like the music of the whatever. I mean, again, this gets hard to explain to nobody ever. Like when I get to the correct crowd at the day the world stood still, it's the local college crowd that doesn't even have a college advisor that I recognize that it becomes a problem or a potential for a problem.
Canada wildfires have been moving south for the last few days, triggering the state and the city to issue warnings about limiting outdoor exposure and to return to wearing KN95 masks.
All of New York State, with the exception of the Adirondacks right now, is under a air quality health advisory.
The air quality is diminished because of fine particulate matter. It is 30 times smaller than human hair and can travel deeply into the respiratory tract, reaching the lungs. It is produced by vehicle emissions and power.
Now this I thought was interesting. It says vehicle emissions, power plants, and wildfires. Now I know that I have this on a reverse mirror image for being able to read it, but like whatever on that. But this fine particulate matter, smaller than a human hair. And then it goes back to the other stuff that I've been inhaling as I've been losing muscle mass and having this high ammonia, like more so than like in a biotoxin kind of a way, for living and what I've been exposed to in Queens.
Power plants and also wildfires and can be carried long distances from their source, according to the State Department of Health.
Particulate matter refers to all the other particles. They're smaller than 2.5 microns. And Darla, why that's important is when objects are smaller than 2.5 microns in particular, they can migrate down our respiratory system into our lower respiratory tract much easier.
But even after this weather pattern passes, there is still great concern.
I'm sorry for everybody that's, because they're going to be suffering from this even after this clears up. You could already hear it in my throat and in my voice.
And today, New York City.
And now she's reporting in Flushing, which is where one of those spheres wound up by the World Trade Fair. But this is where she's reporting from now, and I don't know who was involved in that before I got here.
Hospitals have been on alert for anyone with respiratory conditions who might go to the emergency room. At this point, they say they have not seen an uptick. Reporting live in Flushing, Darla Miles, Channel 7 Eyewitness News.
All right, Darla, thank you very much. We notice Darla is wearing a mask.
So we're now stuck in the house. Can't go outside, can't really exercise because the house isn't really big enough, and we're stuck inside of this. It's star 1978, star 8378, Nicole, Cattaruzza. It's Earth, Solar System, Milky Way, Universe, Galaxy is broken, and it's Bayside Station, Bayside, New York, 11361.